If you're thinking about moving to Seattle, you've probably asked yourself one question. How much money do you actually need to live here? Is it 100,000, 150, 250? The answer is all of those can work. I've helped people relocate here making under six figures, and I've worked with families making over 300 who still feel stretched. So what's the difference? It usually isn't the income. It's the choices you're making with it. For example, imagine two families earning 180 a year. One rents an apartment in downtown Seattle and walks to work every day. The other buys a home in Snoqualmie and commutes a couple days a week. Same income, completely different monthly payment, completely different daily routine. That's why when I talk with relocation clients, I don't start by asking, what's your budget? I usually start with, what do you want your everyday life to look like? Do you want to walk to restaurants and coffee shops? Or would you rather have a bigger yard? How often are you actually commuting? Those answers usually tell me more than an income number ever could. So in this video, I'm going to break down what different income levels actually look like in the Seattle area, what you can realistically afford, and where that money goes so you can decide what makes the most sense for you. Now let's talk about the expense that's going to have pretty much the biggest impact on your budget: housing. Whether you're renting or buying, this is almost always where the largest chunk of your monthly income goes. And when people ask me, how much money do I need to live in Seattle? What they're really asking is, what can I actually afford here? The tricky part is that two people can buy the exact same house and have completely different monthly payments. Maybe one buyer puts down 20% while the other only puts down 5%. Interest rates may be different, property taxes, HOA dues, insurance, all those things change the monthly cost. That's why I don't think purchase price tells the whole story. The number I pay much closer attention to is the monthly payment, because that's what you're actually budgeting for every single month. Now, if you're relocating here and you're not completely sure which area fits you best, renting for the first year can actually make a lot of sense. I've had quite a few clients do exactly that. It gives you time to learn the different cities, test out the commute, figure out where you spend your weekends, and decide what really matters before making a purchase that's probably one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. To give you a rough idea of today's market, most studio apartments are renting in the range of $1,700 to $2,300 per month. One-bedroom apartments typically run about $2,000 to $2,800 a month, and two-bedroom apartments are often in the $2,700 to $4,000 or more, depending on the location. Once you move into buying, the numbers spread out quite a bit. Mini condos start around $450,000, townhomes fall somewhere between $700,000 and just over $1 million, and single-family homes generally start around that $900,000 range, although in a lot of east side cities, you'll quickly see them go well above that. Now let's translate those purchase prices into something a little bit easier to picture. A condo might end up somewhere around $3,000 to $4,500 per month. Many townhomes land closer to $4,500 to $7,000 per month, and a lot of single-family homes fall somewhere between that $5,500 to $9,000 plus, depending on your financing, taxes, insurance, and down payment. These aren't exact payment quotes. They're simply examples to help you understand the range buyers are often working with. One thing I've seen over the years is that people are usually much happier when they choose a payment they're comfortable living with instead of stretching to buy the biggest house they can qualify for. Having room in the budget for travel, hobbies, investing, date nights, or kids' activities can make a much bigger difference than having a few extra 100 square feet. Now that we've got housing in perspective, let's look at what different household income levels actually feel like in the Seattle area. What life looks like on $100,000 a year. Can you comfortably live in the Seattle area on that income? Absolutely. But this is where you'll probably start to make some intentional decisions about where you live and how much you want to spend on housing. Renting. If you're relocating here, I'd probably recommend renting first. Not because buying isn't possible, but because it gives you time to really experience the different parts of the region before making such a big commitment. I've had plenty of clients move here convinced they wanted to live in one city, only to realize 6 months later they actually preferred somewhere completely different after experiencing the commute and getting to know the area. Buying. Homeownership is definitely still on the table at this income level, but you'll probably want to be strategic. That could mean looking at condos, smaller townhomes, or single-family homes in areas where your budget stretches a little further. The goal isn't to buy the most expensive house you can qualify for, it's to find a payment that still feels comfortable month after month. Areas to consider. One thing I see pretty often is people starting their search in places like Seattle, Bellevue, or Kirkland simply because they're the cities they've heard most about. But once we sit down and talk through their budget, commute, and what they actually want out of their day-to-day, we often end up looking at places like Renton, Linwood, Kent, Everett, parts of Tacoma, or even Puyallup opens up some great affordable options where they can get more home for their money. What day-to-day looks like. At around $100,000 a year, housing is probably going to be the biggest factor shaping your decision. This is where you'll likely spend more time comparing cities, weighing your commute against your monthly payment, and deciding whether you'd rather have more space or be closer to work and amenities. One thing I've seen is that buyers at this income level usually have more options than they initially think. Once we start looking beyond the handful of cities everyone knows, there are often some really great opportunities that fit both their budget and what they're looking for. So overall, I'd say $100,000 gives you a solid starting point in the Seattle area. You just want to be thoughtful about where you buy and how much of your monthly income goes towards housing. Now let's see what changes once household income moves up to $150,000 a year. Real quick, if you're still trying to figure out what area makes most sense for you based on your income level, feel free to reach out. There's the QR code right there on the screen, and I also have my contact description in the description below. I love helping people relocate here, so reach out anytime. What life looks like at $150,000 a year. This is where a lot of buyers start to feel like they have some real flexibility. Renting. If you're planning to rent, you're probably going to have a lot more choices. Living closer to downtown Seattle, Bellevue, or Kirkland becomes much more realistic without your housing payment taking up such a large percentage of your income. Buying. If buying is the goal, this is where your search really starts to open up. Depending on your down payment and monthly budget, you'll likely be looking at a wider selection of condos and townhomes, and even in some areas, single-family homes can be a realistic option as well. You're simply working with more inventory than someone shopping at the $100,000 level. Areas to consider. One thing I notice with relocation clients is that this is usually the income range where they have genuine choices. Do you want to be closer to work? Would you rather have a larger home? Is being able to walk to restaurants important, or would you rather have a quieter neighborhood with more space? Those become the conversations, and honestly, they're a lot more fun because there usually just isn't one obvious answer. What day-to-day looks like. For a lot of households, this income level creates more flexibility. A higher housing budget can open the door to neighborhoods that may have felt out of reach before, or it may have just simply allowed you to find a home that checks more boxes on your wish list. I've also noticed that buyers at this income level tend to spend less time asking, can we make this work, and more time comparing which option fits them best. That's a pretty meaningful shift. Now, it doesn't mean that every home in the Seattle area is suddenly affordable. Your down payment, debt, monthly expenses, they all still matter. But compared to $100,000 a year, you'll likely have a much wider range of homes and communities to choose from. Now let's see what changes once household income reaches around $200,000 a year. What life looks like at around $200,000 a year. This is where I start seeing buyers spend less time worrying about what they can afford and more time comparing different ways of living around the Seattle area. Renting. If you're renting, you'll have a lot more flexibility. Living in places like Seattle, Bellevue, Kirkland become much more attainable without feeling like your housing payment is taking over your budget. Buying. If buying is the goal, this is where your search usually opens up quite a bit. Depending on your down payment and overall financial picture, you'll likely have a much wider selection of single-family homes, newer construction communities, and established neighborhoods to choose from. Instead of waiting for the right home to hit the market, you often have several good options to compare. Areas to consider. This is also where the conversation starts changing. Instead of asking, which cities can I afford? Buyers are asking questions like, do I want to be closer to work? Would I rather have a larger yard? Is walkability important? Or would I rather have a quieter neighborhood? Do I want an older home with character or something newer that needs less maintenance? These are the kinds of conversations we're usually having at this income level. What day-to-day looks like. One thing I enjoy about working with buyers in this range is that we're usually comparing good options instead of trying to make one option fit. A little closer to the city or a little more space. A newer home or a shorter commute. More walkability or more privacy. Those are much more enjoyable decisions to make because there usually isn't a wrong answer. Overall, I'd say this income level gives you the flexibility to focus less on your budget and more on finding a home that fits the way you want to live. Now let's take one final step and look at what changes once you get a household income of $300,000 or more a year. What life looks like at $300,000 or more a year. From the outside, a lot of people assume that once you reach this income level, you can pretty much live anywhere you want in the Seattle area. The reality is a little more nuanced than that. Seattle is still an expensive market, especially if you're looking in places like Bellevue, Medina, Mercer Island, or waterfront communities. Renting. If you're renting, your budget is unlikely to be the limiting factor for anything. You'll have the flexibility to choose almost entirely based on location and convenience. Buying. If you're buying, this is where you'll have access to a much larger portion of the market. Larger homes, newer construction, sought-after neighborhoods, and properties with premium features all become much more attainable. That doesn't mean every home is affordable, but it does mean you'll have significantly more choices than buyers at the lower income levels. Areas to consider. What's interesting is that buyers in this range often aren't comparing prices as much as they're comparing neighborhoods. Do you want to be close to the office? Would you rather be on the water? Is privacy more important than walkability? Would you rather have a newer home or a larger lot? Those questions usually drive the search more than the purchase price itself. What day-to-day looks like. One thing I've noticed is that buyers at this income level rarely struggle to find homes they like. The challenge is narrowing the list down because there are so many good options. That's actually one of my favorite parts of helping relocation clients. Once we talk through your commute, your routine, and what you want your weekends to look like, it becomes much easier to identify the neighborhoods that make the most sense. So while a higher income certainly opens more doors, it doesn't eliminate the need to choose carefully. It simply gives you the flexibility to focus on finding the home and community that fits you best. Now, before we wrap this up, there's one more financial advantage to living in Washington that every person relocating here should know about. One thing that can change the math. Before we wrap up, there's one more factor that's worth mentioning because it can have a meaningful impact on your finances if you're relocating here. Washington does not have a state income tax on wage income. If you're moving from states like California, Oregon, New York, or New Jersey, that can make a noticeable difference in your take-home pay. It's something a lot of my relocation clients are pleasantly surprised by when they compare what they're actually bringing home each month. Now, does that suddenly make Seattle inexpensive? Not at all. Housing is still one of the biggest expenses you'll have. Childcare can be costly and everyday expenses certainly add up. But depending on where you're moving from, not paying state income tax on your wages can help offset some of those higher costs. One thing worth mentioning though is that Washington's tax system isn't completely tax-free. While there's no state income tax on wages, there are taxes that can affect certain higher income households, such as the state's capital gains tax on qualifying investment gains above specific thresholds. For most people watching this video though, that's probably not going to change your relocation decision. But if you have substantial investment income, own a business, have a more complex financial decision, it's a good idea to talk with a CPA or tax advisor so you understand how Washington's tax laws apply to you. For everyone else, I'd focus on things that are going to have the biggest impact on your monthly budget. Where do you want to live? How much are you comfortable spending on housing? How often are you commuting? Those three decisions will usually have a much bigger impact on your finances than almost anything else. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from this video is that there isn't one magic income number that works for everyone. I've worked with households earning $100,000 a year who found a place they genuinely loved. And I've worked with households earning 3 times that amount who still had to decide between different neighborhoods, commute times, and home styles. The income matters, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. Once you match your budget with the right city, the right neighborhood, and the way you actually want to live your day-to-day, the answer becomes a whole lot clearer. So how much money do you really need? So after helping hundreds of people buy and sell homes around Seattle, my answer would be there isn't one number. I've worked with households earning around $100,000 a year who found a home they've loved. If I had to give you a general range where I see a lot of buyers start feeling like they have more flexibility, I'd probably say somewhere in the 150 to 200 range in household income. That's where I see many buyers go from asking, what can we afford, to asking which option fits us best. But everyone's situation is different. Your commute, your down payment, whether you're buying as a single person, a couple, or a family, whether you plan to rent first or buy right away, all those things can change the answer. So if there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's this. Don't build your home search around a specific purchase price. Build it around your monthly budget you're comfortable with and the kind of day-to-day life you want once you get here. In my experience, that's usually what leads people to the right city, the right neighborhood, and ultimately the right home. If you're trying to figure out what that looks like for your situation, that's honestly what I help people with all the time. Everyone's budget, commute, and priorities are a little different, so if you'd like to talk through your options, my contact information is here on the screen and down in the description. You can also scan the QR code to schedule a Zoom call. I'd be happy to help put together a plan that makes sense for you. Thanks so much.